London West.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Speaker, today is Equal Pay Day, a day that marks how much further into the next year a woman has to work in order to earn the same salary a man earned the year before. Each year in this province, women's average earnings are about 1/3 less than a man's, an injustice that is both a human rights issue and a major barrier to Ontario's economic and social well-being. Speaker, eliminating the gender pay gap is a multifaceted challenge, but we know from other countries that it can be done, given the right government legislation and a real commitment to act. Speaker, I would like to ask the Premier, after more than a decade in office, how can you justify allowing the gender wage gap to widen under your watch instead of to close?
Thank you. Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for this very, very important question, very appropriate for Equal Pay Day. Our government's committed to developing a wage gap strategy in Ontario that is going to close the gap in earnings between men and women. That's part of the Premier's mandate letter to me as Minister of Labour. And I'm pleased to say that today we're announcing the creation of a wage gap steering committee. This steering committee is going to develop recommendations that will help create a strategy that's aimed at closing the gap through the actions of business, of government, of Labour and of all Ontarians. Two external advisors, two very good external advisors are being appointed, Linda Davis, Dr. Singh. They're going to be joined, Speaker, by Ontario's Pay Equity Commissioner, Emmanuel Hynek, and Nancy Austin, the Wage Gap Strategy Executive Lead, will be representing the Ministry of Labour. The object here, Speaker, is to make progress on this issue.
Stop. Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. Supplementary.
Speaker, it's embarrassing that we have yet to remedy this situation in 2015. After more than a decade of Liberal government, the problem is getting worse. The gap has widened to 31.5% from 28%. Simply talking about the issue, appointing another panel is not enough. Women's livelihoods are at stake. Speaker, it is not progressive to allow the gender pay gap to widen. It is not progressive for the government to refuse to comply with its own pay equity laws for female-dominated professions like midwifery and community service. Speaker, when can Ontarians expect real action from this Liberal government to close the gender pay gap?
Thank you. Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The Minister responsible for women's issues.
Thank you.
Responsible for women's issues.
Thank you, Speaker. So our Ontario Pay Equity Act continues to be recognized across Canada and internationally as one of the most progressive pay equity statutes in the world, Speaker. And in terms of action, I do want to highlight on what this government has done to make sure we have a fair society for women and make sure they're paid the same as men in similar jobs. There is more work to do. You heard from the Minister of Labour about the panel that there's been a number of programs the Women's Directorate has supported to help low-income women and women who experience violence and help people get new skills and careers. More than 2,200 women have participated in training through the Women in Skills Trade and Information Technology program. We have a micro-lending program, Speaker, and be assured that our government is very, very determined to close the wage gap in Ontario.